Mia was walking home from school one rainy afternoon when she heard a soft whimper coming from behind a bush. Curious, she stopped and peeked through the dripping leaves. There, shivering and wet, was a tiny puppy with floppy ears and big brown eyes. His fur was matted from the rain, and he looked frightened and lost. Mia's heart immediately melted. She gently reached out her hand, speaking in a calm voice so the little dog wouldn't be scared. To her surprise, the puppy slowly stepped out and pressed his damp nose against her palm. She could tell right away that he belonged to someone because he wore a faded red collar, but the tag had fallen off. Instead of running straight home with him, Mia thought about what would happen if her own pet was lost and how worried she would feel. She wrapped the puppy in her jacket and decided she had to help him find his family. The rain made it harder to go door to door, but Mia knocked at every house along her street. At the first house, a man shook his head kindly and said he hadn't lost a dog. At the second, a woman smiled and said she hoped Mia would find the puppy's home soon. Each time, Mia felt a little tired, but she refused to give up. The puppy wagged his tail each time someone opened a door, as if hoping his family was finally there. Hours seemed to pass, and Mia's shoes were soaked, but she remembered her teacher once said, "Kindness means doing the right thing even when it's hard." At last, she reached the end of the street and knocked on a little blue house with flowers by the gate. An older woman opened the door, her eyes widening as she gasped, "Buddy. You found him." She knelt down and hugged the puppy tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. He ran off this morning, and I was so worried." Mia smiled, relieved, as the puppy licked the woman's face happily. She walked home later, tired but proud, realizing kindness always finds its way back. Even though it had been a long, wet journey, Mia knew she had given someone a piece of joy that couldn't be measured. The next day at school, Sam was sitting at his usual lunch table when he noticed a boy sitting all alone at the edge of the cafeteria. His tray was empty, and he kept his eyes on the floor while everyone else chatted and ate happily. Sam felt a tug in his chest. He had seen the boy before, a new student who had just joined their class, but no one really talked to him yet. Sam opened his lunchbox and looked at his sandwich, peanut butter and jelly, his favorite. He thought for a moment and then stood up, carrying half of his sandwich on a napkin. Walking over, he gently placed it in front of the boy and said, "Hey, want to share?" The boy looked up, surprised, as if he wasn't sure whether Sam was serious. Then his face broke into a shy smile, and he nodded gratefully. Word spread quickly, and a few other classmates joined the table, offering snacks, fruit, and even cookies. Before long, laughter filled the air, and the new student no longer looked alone or invisible. The cafeteria, which had once felt too big and scary to him, suddenly felt like a place of belonging. Sam didn't think he had done anything grand. It was just a sandwich. But to the boy, it was a doorway to friendship, a gesture that told him he mattered. By the end of lunch, they were already talking about what games to play at recess. Sam learned something important that day: kindness doesn't have to be big or loud to change someone's life. Sometimes, it's as simple as saying, "Come sit with me," or sharing what you have. That small choice can open a whole new world for someone who needs it most. Lila loved art class more than anything else at school. Every Friday, their teacher handed out drawing paper, paint, and crayons, and the room would fill with the sound of imagination. But today, as the children rushed to their desks, she noticed a few kids looking disappointed. Some had forgotten their supplies, and others had broken crayons that barely worked anymore. Lila remembered how sad she had felt once when she didn't have colors to finish her picture, so she reached into her backpack and pulled out a brand new box of crayons she had been saving. It was filled with every color imaginable, bright and sharp. She hesitated for a moment, thinking how nice it would be to keep them just for herself, but then she looked around at her classmates and knew what she needed to do. Smiling, she walked over to the kids without crayons and said, "Here, we can all use these together." At first, they were surprised, but soon their faces lit up. The crayons passed from hand to hand, and the whole classroom began to buzz with creativity again. Some kids drew animals, others made landscapes, and a few began sketching superheroes. Lila sat back and used a few colors of her own, happy to see everyone smiling. The teacher noticed what she had done and nodded proudly. By the end of class, something magical happened. Instead of keeping their drawings separate, the kids decided to tape them all together into one giant mural. There were rainbows stretching over mountains, cats playing with butterflies, rockets zooming into the stars, and families holding hands. When they were finished, the mural covered the whole side of the classroom wall, and the crayons that had once belonged only to Lila had created something everyone could enjoy together. As the children admired their masterpiece, the crayon box sat on the desk, a little worn but somehow brighter than before. Lila realized that kindness was like color, it spread best when it was shared. One warm Saturday afternoon, Jake was riding his bike down the street when he saw his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Green, standing at the corner with two heavy grocery bags. The bags looked almost as big as she was, and she seemed tired, shifting from one foot to the other as she waited for the cars to pass. Jake slowed down and hopped off his bike. He remembered how his parents always told him to look out for neighbors, especially those who might need help. "Do you need a hand, Mrs. Green?" he asked politely. Her face brightened with relief, and she nodded. "Oh, thank you, dear. These bags are heavier than I expected." Without hesitation, Jake picked them up, surprised at just how heavy they really were. He carefully walked beside her as they crossed the street together, making sure the cars had stopped before stepping off the curb. Mrs. Green chatted as they walked, telling him about the apple pie she planned to bake and how she would share a slice with him later. Jake listened happily, proud that his small action was making such a difference. When they reached her house, he carried the bags right into her kitchen and placed them on the counter. "You're such a thoughtful young man," she said, giving him a warm smile. "The world needs more helpers like you." Jake felt a glow in his chest. It hadn't taken him long, and it wasn't hard, but it had made Mrs. Green's day so much easier. Later, as he rode his bike home, he realized something important: kindness didn't always mean doing something huge. Sometimes, it was simply pausing in your own busy day to notice someone else's struggle and stepping in to help. That evening, when Mrs. Green brought over a warm slice of pie, Jake tasted not just apples and cinnamon but also the sweetness of kindness shared between neighbors. During recess, Emma noticed something she had seen many times before. The playground was full of laughter and games, children racing down slides, kicking balls across the field, and swinging as high as they could. But near the edge of the playground, sitting quietly on a bench, was a boy named Daniel. He was new to the school and hadn't really spoken to anyone yet. His hands rested on his knees, and though he watched the other kids with interest, he never joined in. Emma felt a pang in her heart. She remembered her first day at school, when she had stood by herself, wishing someone would invite her to play. That memory nudged her, so she walked over to him. "Hi, Daniel," she said cheerfully. "Do you want to play tag with us?" Daniel looked surprised, as though he wasn't sure she was really talking to him. "I don't know," he said softly. "I'm not very fast." Emma grinned. "That's okay. I'm not the fastest either. We just have fun together." She held out her hand, and after a moment, Daniel took it. She led him to the group of kids already chasing each other across the field. At first, Daniel stayed close to Emma, nervous about joining in, but when another child tagged him with a laugh, something changed. His face broke into a smile, and soon he was running with the rest of them, laughing so hard he forgot his shyness. The other kids welcomed him easily, shouting his name as if he had always been part of their game. Emma watched as he tagged another player and laughed again, his cheeks flushed with happiness. She felt proud that she had been the one to reach out. By the end of recess, Daniel wasn't sitting alone anymore, he was part of the group. That day, Emma learned how powerful it was to notice someone who felt invisible and show them they belonged. For Daniel, one invitation had turned an empty, lonely playground into a place of joy. For Emma, it was a reminder that kindness didn't cost anything, but it could change everything. The following week in class, their teacher introduced something new. She called it the kindness chain. On the wall, she pinned a long strip of paper links shaped like a chain, and she explained that every time a student performed an act of kindness, they would write it down on a paper link and add it to the chain. The children were excited and curious to see how long the chain could grow. The first act came quickly. Sam held the classroom door open for everyone, and the teacher handed him a strip of paper to write it down. The next day, Mia shared her pencils with a classmate who had forgotten theirs, and another link was added. Soon, The idea spread like wildfire. One by one, the students began looking for little ways to help, not because they had to, but because they wanted to see the chain grow. Someone helped pick up books that had fallen, another student offered a seat to a friend, and one child even helped a kindergartner tie their shoe. Each act, no matter how small, was celebrated and written down. By the end of the week, the chain stretched across the classroom wall, and the children were amazed at how far their kindness had reached. The most beautiful part was how the kindness didn't stop at school. Students began doing small acts at home, helping their parents set the table, reading stories to younger siblings, and even saying kind words to neighbors. They came back excited to add new links to the chain each day. The teacher reminded them, kindness is like a ripple in water. One small act can spread farther than you imagine. When the chain finally wrapped all the way around the classroom, the children cheered, realizing it was a symbol of their hearts working together. The kindness chain had started as a simple classroom activity, but it had become a lesson the children would carry forever. Kindness multiplies, and it never really ends.